I still remember the exact moment I realized the woman I had loved for 12 years had become my enemy. It was a Tuesday evening in late October, the kind of night where the Boston wind cuts through your coat and makes you want nothing more than to get home to warmth and comfort. I was sitting in my car outside our brownstone in Back Bay, a home I had worked 16-hour days for 7 years to afford, and I was watching my wife through the living room window as she laughed at something on her phone. There was something about that laugh, something I had not seen directed at me in months, maybe longer. It was the laugh of a woman in love, and somehow sitting in that cold car with the engine off, I knew with absolute certainty that love was not for me. But I am getting ahead of myself. If I am going to tell you this story properly, if I am going to make you understand how the woman who once promised to love me until death became the person who tried to destroy everything I had built, I need to take you back to the beginning. I need to show you the Marcus Williams who walked into that art gallery in Cambridge 14 years ago, the man who still believed that love was simple and that good intentions were enough. I grew up in Dorchester, the younger of two boys raised by a single mother who worked double shifts at Massachusetts General Hospital. My father left when I was 6 years old, disappeared one morning to buy cigarettes, and never came back. It is a cliche, I know, but cliches become cliches because they happen to real people, and it happened to me. My mother, God rest her soul, she raised me and my brother Jerome with nothing but determination and unconditional love. She taught us that a man's word is his bond, that you treat people the way you want to be treated, and that there is no shame in hard work. I took those lessons seriously. While other kids in my neighborhood were getting into trouble, I was working after school at a grocery store, saving every penny for college. I got a scholarship to Boston University, studied finance, and graduated near the top of my class. By the time I was 24, I had landed a job at a prestigious investment firm downtown. By 30, I had made junior partner. By 35, I had my own boutique wealth management company with 40 employees and clients whose portfolios I managed into the hundreds of millions. I am not telling you this to brag. I am telling you because you need to understand what I had built and what Vanessa tried to take from me. You need to understand that everything I had, I earned with my own hands, my own mind, my own sacrifice. There were no handouts, no family connections, no inherited wealth. Every single dollar in my account represented hours of work, sleepless nights, missed holidays, and calculated risks that paid off. When I met Vanessa Carter at that gallery opening in Cambridge, I thought I had found the missing piece of my life. I was 32 years old, successful but lonely, and she was 29, beautiful in a way that made it hard to think straight. She had long dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, green eyes that seemed to hold secrets and promises in equal measure, and a smile that made me feel like I was the only person in the room. She was standing in front of an abstract painting, tilting her head like she was trying to decode a message meant only for her, and I walked up and made some stupid joke about how modern art always made me feel like I was missing the punchline. She laughed, that same laugh I would later watch through my living room window, and something inside me shifted into place. We talked for 3 hours that night until the gallery staff started stacking chairs and giving us pointed looks. She told me she was a marketing consultant, that she had grown up in Connecticut in a family that put too much emphasis on appearances and not enough on authenticity. She said she was tired of superficial people, tired of men who only cared about her looks, tired of relationships that felt like transactions. She wanted something real, something built on trust and mutual respect. I believed every word. Our courtship was something out of a movie, or at least that is how it felt to me. Long walks along the Charles River, weekends in Vermont, dinners at quiet restaurants where we would talk until they turned the lights up. She seemed genuinely interested in my story, in how I had pulled myself up from nothing, in my dreams for the future. She never made me feel less than because of where I came from. If anything, she seemed to admire it, to see my background as evidence of character rather than a mark against me. I proposed after 18 months. We were on a boat in Boston Harbor, the city skyline lit up behind us, and when I got down on one knee, she cried in a way that seemed utterly real. She said yes before I could even finish the question, and I remember thinking that all those years of hard work and loneliness had been worth it because they had led me to this moment, to this woman, to this future. We got married the following spring at a venue in the Berkshires that cost more than my mother had made in 2 years. Vanessa's family came, her parents and her sister and aunts and uncles and cousins, and they were polite to me in a way that felt like tolerance rather than acceptance. Her father, Richard Carter, was a retired executive who looked at me like he was appraising a used car. Her mother, Patricia, had a smile that never quite reached her eyes. But I told myself it did not matter, that in-laws were always complicated, that what mattered was the woman standing across from me saying her vows. For better or for worse, she said, in sickness and in health. Until death do us part, those words would come back to haunt me. The first few years of our marriage were good, or at least I thought they were. We bought the brownstone in Back Bay, renovated it to Vanessa's specifications, filled it with furniture and art that she selected. I worked long hours building my company, and she supported me, or so I believed. She would have dinner waiting when I got home late, would rub my shoulders when I was stressed, would tell me how proud she was of what I was building. Looking back now, I can see the cracks that I missed at the time. Small things that did not add up, inconsistencies that I explained away because I did not want to see the truth. The way she always knew exactly what to say to make me feel good, almost like she had studied a script. The way her affection seemed to intensify whenever I mentioned bonuses or successful quarters. The way she would sometimes look at our life like she was taking inventory rather than enjoying it. But I was in love, and love makes you stupid. It makes you see what you want to see instead of what is actually there. The first real warning sign came about 4 years into our marriage. I had come home early from a business trip, my flight having been moved up due to weather, and I found Vanessa in our home office going through my desk. She startled when I walked in, which was strange because she had never startled easily, and when I asked what she was doing, she said she was looking for stamps. Stamps. I accepted the explanation because I wanted to, because the alternative was too uncomfortable to consider. But that night I checked my desk and everything was exactly where I had left it. The financial statements, the client lists, the password notebook I stupidly kept in my drawer. Nothing was missing, but something had been disturbed. I could feel it. I told myself I was being paranoid. The second warning sign came 6 months later. My brother, Jerome, who had served 2 tours in Afghanistan and had developed an almost supernatural ability to read people, pulled me aside at a family barbecue. He had been watching Vanessa all afternoon, that quiet, assessing look he got when something was not sitting right with him. "Marcus," he said, his voice low so only I could hear, "I need you to really look at your wife. Not with your heart, but with your eyes." "What are you talking about?" I asked, defensive and annoyed. He shook his head. "Something is off about her," he said. "I cannot put my finger on it, but that woman is playing a role. I have seen it before. In combat, you learn to spot people who are performing instead of being." I told Jerome he was wrong, that he did not know Vanessa like I did, that his military experience was making him paranoid. He did not push back, just nodded and said he hoped he was wrong. The tension between them never fully resolved after that. Vanessa would make subtle comments about Jerome being intense or damaged from the war, and I would defend her, never realizing that she was slowly, methodically isolating me from the one person who could see through her mask. By year 7 of our marriage, things had changed in ways I could not quite articulate. The affection had cooled, replaced by a kind of polite efficiency. We were less like lovers and more like roommates who happened to share a bed. I blamed myself, blamed my work hours, blamed the stress of growing a business. I tried to fix things, suggested couples therapy, planned romantic getaways, bought gifts that sat unopened on her dresser. Vanessa always had excuses. She was tired, she was stressed about her own work, she needed space to figure things out, and I, like the fool I was, gave her that space. I pulled back when I should have pushed forward. I accepted distance when I should have demanded closeness. What I did not know, what I would not discover for another 5 years, was that Vanessa had never loved me at all. I was a project to her, an investment, a means to an end. From the very beginning, she had been playing a long game, and I was too blinded by my own need to be loved to see it. The truth began to reveal itself the same way dawn breaks on the horizon, slowly at first, then all at once. It was that Tuesday in October, the one I mentioned at the beginning, the one where I sat in my car watching my wife laugh at her phone. Something compelled me not to go inside right away. Instead, I watched. Vanessa was pacing the living room, animated and happy in a way I had not seen in years, and every few seconds she would glance at the door like she was making sure I was not coming through it. I watched for 15 minutes. 15 minutes of my wife being a stranger, being alive in a way she had not been with me for longer than I could remember. When she finally ended whatever conversation she was having, her face transformed. The light went out, replaced by the neutral expression I had come to know as her default. She sat down on the couch, picked up a book, and became the woman who would look up with mild disinterest when I walked through the door. That night, after she went to sleep, I did something I had never done in 12 years of marriage. I looked at her phone. I am not proud of it. I had always believed in privacy and trust, in giving your partner the benefit of the doubt, but something had shifted inside me, some protective instinct that Jerome would have recognized. I needed to know. I needed to see what was happening in my own house, in my own marriage. Her phone was locked, but I knew the passcode. She had never bothered to change it, probably because she never thought I would look. I typed in the numbers with shaking fingers and navigated to her messages. His name was Derek Holloway. Even the name made my stomach turn. The messages went back months, maybe longer, and they told a story that made the room spin around me. Endearments, plans, complaints about me. Vanessa had written things about our marriage that cut me to the bone, mocking my work ethic, laughing at my attempts at romance, referring to me as the ATM more than once. But it was not just an affair. That would have been devastating enough, but what I found was so much worse. There were conversations about money, my company. There were references to documents and accounts, to timelines and exit strategies. There were messages where Derek and Vanessa discussed how much they could extract before I noticed, how to structure things so I would be left with nothing, how to make it look like I was the one at fault. They were planning to destroy me. They were planning to take everything I had built, everything I had sacrificed for, and leave me with ruins. I did not sleep that night. I lay in bed next to the woman who had become my enemy, and I stared at the ceiling while my mind raced through every interaction, every memory, every moment of the last 12 years. I thought about all the times I had trusted her with financial information. I thought about the documents she had access to, the passwords she knew, the accounts she could monitor. I thought about how much damage she could do if she wanted to, and I realized that she had been positioning herself for years. The next morning, I went to work like nothing was wrong. I smiled at Vanessa over breakfast. I kissed her on the cheek as I left. I played the role of the oblivious husband because I knew that if she suspected I was on to her, she would accelerate whatever plan she had in motion. I needed time. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I needed to build a case. My first call was to my brother Jerome. I told him everything, the phone, the messages, the plot against me, and he listened without interruption. When I finished, there was a long silence on the line. I knew it, he said finally. I knew something was wrong with her from the beginning. Marcus, you need to be smart about this. You cannot confront her yet. You cannot let her know you know. What do I do? I asked. You gather evidence, he said. You document everything. You find out who this Derek is and what his angle is, and you find yourself a lawyer, the meanest, most ruthless divorce attorney in the state. It was good advice. Over the next few weeks, I became someone I barely recognized. On the surface, I was still Marcus Williams' devoted husband and successful businessman. Underneath, I was an investigator, a strategist, a man preparing for war. The first thing I did was research Derek Holloway. It did not take long to find him. He was a real estate developer, moderately successful, with a reputation for aggressive business tactics and flexible ethics. He had been divorced twice, both times amid accusations of financial manipulation. His company had faced several lawsuits from former partners who claimed he had cheated them out of their shares. He was, in short, exactly the kind of predator who would be attracted to a scheme like the one Vanessa was running. What I could not figure out, at least not at first, was how they had met. Vanessa's social media showed no connection to him. Our social circles did not overlap. It was like they had appeared in each other's lives out of nowhere. The answer came from an unexpected source. I was going through our credit card statements, something I had apparently been too trusting to do regularly, when I noticed a pattern. Every few weeks, there was a charge at a hotel in downtown Boston. The same hotel, the same approximate amount, stretching back 2 years. 2 years. My wife had been having an affair for 2 years, and I had never noticed. The hotel was where they met, that much was clear. But it was also where Vanessa had first encountered Derek at a networking event she had attended for her marketing work. I pieced this together from old emails I found by accessing her laptop while she was out. The laptop she thought was secure because she did not know I had installed a keylogger on our home network months ago, back when I had noticed some unauthorized access attempts and thought it was external hackers. The keylogger had captured her passwords, every single one. What I found when I got into her email made the phone messages look like love letters. Vanessa and Derek had been planning their scheme for 18 months. The affair had started as a fling, two people with flexible morals finding each other attractive, but it had evolved into something far more sinister when Derek learned about my business and my assets. There were spreadsheets. Vanessa had created detailed spreadsheets of everything I owned, every account, every investment, every piece of property. She had documentation of my business structure, my client relationships, my revenue streams. She had been conducting surveillance on her own husband for the better part of 2 years. The plan, as I pieced it together from hundreds of emails and messages, was diabolical in its simplicity. Vanessa would initiate divorce proceedings, claiming emotional abuse and financial manipulation. She had been building a paper trail, documenting fabricated instances of my supposed cruelty, creating a narrative that would paint her as the victim. She had even seen a therapist, not for genuine help, but to establish a record of my alleged mistreatment. Simultaneously, Derek would approach my business from the outside. He had already begun cultivating relationships with some of my smaller clients, positioning himself as an alternative wealth manager. He was preparing to poach my accounts the moment my personal life imploded, knowing that a messy divorce involving accusations of abuse would make clients nervous. The final piece was the most audacious. Vanessa had been slowly funneling money from our joint accounts into hidden investments, purchases that appeared legitimate but were actually assets that would disappear before any divorce settlement could account for them. She had been stealing from me for over a year, small amounts at first but growing larger as she became more confident. When the divorce was final, she would walk away with half of what remained, plus whatever she had hidden, plus the sympathy of everyone who believed her lies. Derek would absorb my fleeing clients and build his empire on the bones of mine, and I would be left with nothing but a ruined reputation and a broken heart. That was their plan, but they had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated me. I spent the next 3 months in a state of cold, focused fury. On the outside, nothing changed. I came home to Vanessa every night, ate dinner with her, made small talk about our days, even initiated physical affection occasionally to keep up appearances. It was the hardest performance of my life, pretending to love someone I had come to despise, but I did it because I knew the alternative was worse. Privately, I was building my case. I hired a forensic accountant named Claire Mitchell, a woman my lawyer recommended who had a reputation for finding hidden assets that other accountants missed. Claire was small and quiet, the kind of person you would overlook in a crowd, but her mind was razor sharp. Within 2 weeks, she had identified over $300,000 that Vanessa had siphoned from our accounts. Within a month, she had traced it to shell companies and investments that connected directly to Derek Holloway. The evidence was damning, not just for a divorce, but potentially for criminal prosecution. I also hired a private investigator, a former FBI agent named Thomas Reed, who specialized in financial crimes. Thomas was expensive, but he was worth every penny. He documented Vanessa and Derek's meetings, photographed them together, recorded conversations that revealed the scope of their conspiracy. In Massachusetts, recording someone without their consent is illegal in most circumstances, but Thomas knew how to gather evidence that would be admissible, how to build a case that would hold up in court. By January, 4 months after that night, I watched Vanessa through the window. I had assembled a dossier that could destroy her. Bank statements, emails, photographs, recorded conversations, testimony from people Derek had cheated in the past, documentation of the hidden assets, proof of the affair, evidence of the embezzlement. I had enough to bury her in divorce court and potentially send her to prison, but I did not use it, not yet, because destroying Vanessa was not enough. I wanted her to know that I knew. I wanted her to understand that she had been outplayed. I wanted her to feel the same fear and helplessness she had planned to inflict on me, and I wanted Derek Holloway to go down with her. The opportunity came in February at a charity gala that Derek was attending. He did not know who I was, at least not by sight, so when I introduced myself as a potential investor interested in his latest real estate project, he welcomed me with the oily charm of a born salesman. Over drinks, I let him pitch me on a development deal, nodding along as he described returns that sounded too good to be true. I asked intelligent questions, expressed enthusiasm, gave every indication that I was a wealthy mark waiting to be fleeced. By the end of the night, Derek was treating me like his new best friend, promising to send over investment documents, inviting me to a private presentation for high net worth individuals. What he did not know was that I was recording everything. What he did not know was that the deal he was pitching was almost certainly a fraud, structured in a way that would leave investors holding worthless paper while Derek walked away with their money. What he did not know was that I was already in contact with the Securities and Exchange Commission, feeding them information about his previous schemes and his current activities. I was not just going to defeat Vanessa and Derek. I was going to ensure they faced real consequences for everything they had done, not just to me, but to everyone else they had victimized over the years. The weeks that followed were a careful dance. I continued to play the oblivious husband at home while gathering more evidence against Derek in his business dealings. I found 3 former investors who had lost significant money in his previous ventures and were eager to testify against him. I connected with the ex-wives who had accused him of financial manipulation and helped them see that their suspicions had been correct. I built a coalition of people Derek had wronged, a network of potential witnesses who could testify to a pattern of fraud and deception. Meanwhile, Vanessa grew increasingly confident. She did not know that I had been documenting her activities, that I had copies of every email and message, that I knew about every hidden account and secret meeting. In her mind, the plan was proceeding perfectly. She was preparing to file for divorce within the month, ready to unleash the accusations she had been fabricating for years. She never saw me coming. I chose March 15th to make my move. The Ides of March. There was something poetic about it. The day Caesar was betrayed by those he trusted, the day everything changed. I wanted Vanessa to remember the date for the rest of her life. That morning, before she woke up, I moved the bulk of our liquid assets into accounts she could not access. This was not illegal, despite what she would later claim. The money was mine, earned through my business, and I had every right to protect it from someone who had been systematically stealing from me. I also removed all the sensitive documents from our home, the originals and the copies, everything that Vanessa had been using to build her case against me. Then I went to work like any other day. At noon, Vanessa received a call from her bank informing her that the joint account she had been using as a staging ground for her theft had been frozen pending investigation. The same bank had received a detailed report of suspicious transactions, complete with evidence linking those transactions to potential money laundering and fraud. The report had come from an anonymous source, but the documentation was thorough enough to trigger an automatic review. At 1 o'clock, Derek Holloway received a visit from investigators with the Securities and Exchange Commission. They had questions about his current real estate project, questions about his previous ventures, questions about the pattern of investments that seemed to benefit him while leaving his partners with nothing. The investigation had been opened based on complaints from multiple former investors, supported by documentation that left little room for denial. At 2 o'clock, Vanessa received a different kind of notification. A courier delivered an envelope containing divorce papers, not the papers she had been planning to file, full of fabricated accusations and manipulated evidence, but papers I had prepared with the help of the most aggressive divorce attorney in Massachusetts. The papers cited adultery, fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. They included a summary of the evidence I had gathered, enough to make clear that any attempt to contest the divorce or claim victim status would result in the full dossier being submitted to both the court and law enforcement. At 3 o'clock, I came home. Vanessa was sitting in the living room, the divorce papers spread across the coffee table, her face a mask of shock and fury. She had been crying, or pretending to cry, and when she saw me, she started to speak, started to launch into whatever performance she had prepared. I held up my hand to stop her. "I know everything," I said. My voice was calm, calmer than I felt. "I know about Derek. I know about the money. I know about the plan. I have documentation of every email, every message, every meeting, every dollar you stole from me over the past 2 years. I have witnesses who will testify to Derek's pattern of fraud, and I have evidence that connects you to his criminal activities." Vanessa's face changed. The mask slipped just for a moment, and I saw the real woman underneath. Not the charming partner who had won my heart, but the calculating predator who had been circling me for over a decade. "You do not understand," she started. "I understand perfectly," I said. "You married me for my money. You never loved me. You spent 12 years pretending while you positioned yourself for this. And now you are caught." What followed was not a conversation. It was a negotiation, although negotiation implies that both sides have leverage. Vanessa had none. I had all of it. The evidence I had gathered was comprehensive enough to ensure she would lose everything in a divorce, and the criminal connections were serious enough to threaten her with prosecution. In the end, she signed. The divorce was finalized in April after one of the fastest proceedings in the history of family court in Massachusetts. Vanessa received nothing from our marriage except her personal belongings and a reputation that would follow her for the rest of her life. The hidden assets were recovered, the stolen money was returned, and she was lucky that I chose not to press criminal charges, a decision I made not out of mercy, but out of a desire to move on with my life. Derek Holloway was not so lucky. The SEC investigation expanded into a full criminal referral. By summer, he was facing multiple counts of securities fraud and was eventually sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. His assets were seized, his reputation was destroyed, and the investors he had cheated received at least partial restitution. Vanessa tried to rebuild her life. She moved to Connecticut, back to her parents, who received her with the tight-lipped displeasure of people who cared more about appearances than about their daughter's well-being. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she struggled to find work, that her name had become toxic in the marketing world once word spread about what she had done. I heard that she tried to reconnect with Derek after his conviction, that she wrote him letters in prison, but that he blamed her for his downfall and refused to respond. I did not feel sorry for her. I could not afford to. Pity would have been a betrayal of myself, of the years I had spent being deceived, of the future that had been stolen from me. But I would be lying if I said I emerged from the experience unchanged. The months after the divorce were the hardest of my life, not because of the legal proceedings or the financial complications, but because of what I had learned about myself and about the nature of trust. I had built my entire life on the foundation of hard work and honest relationships, and Vanessa had shown me how easily that foundation could be undermined. I questioned everything, every memory of our marriage, every moment of apparent happiness, every word of affection she had spoken. Had any of it been real, or had I been a mark from the very beginning, selected and groomed and manipulated by a woman who saw human beings as resources to be exploited? My brother Jerome was instrumental in getting me through those dark months. He had seen combat, had watched friends die, had confronted the worst that humanity had to offer, and he understood trauma in a way that most people never will. He did not try to fix me or offer empty platitudes. He just sat with me, let me talk when I needed to talk and stay silent when I needed silence, and reminded me that survival is a form of victory. I also started seeing a therapist, a man named Dr. Samuel Wright, who specialized in helping people recover from emotional manipulation and psychological abuse. Yes, abuse. It took me a long time to accept that word, to understand that what Vanessa had done to me was not just betrayal, but a form of violence. She had violated my trust, manipulated my emotions, exploited my vulnerabilities, and done it all with the cold calculation of someone who saw me as a means to an end rather than a human being worthy of love. The therapy helped. Slowly, over many months, I began to rebuild my sense of self. I learned to recognize the warning signs I had missed, the red flags that I had dismissed because I was too in love to see clearly. I learned to trust my instincts again, to value my brother's judgment, to understand that suspicion is not the same as paranoia when the evidence supports it. And I learned, perhaps most importantly, that what happened to me was not my fault. I had loved someone who did not deserve my love. I had trusted someone who was unworthy of trust. I had given my heart to a woman who did not have the capacity to receive it. But those were not failures of character. They were evidence of my capacity for love, for generosity, for seeing the best in people. The failure was Vanessa's, not mine. By autumn, I was ready to return to the world. My business had survived the disruption of the divorce, thanks largely to the loyalty of my employees and the support of clients who understood that personal difficulties do not define professional capability. I threw myself into work with renewed energy, channeling the anger and hurt into productivity. The revenge, if you want to call it that, was not over, because while Vanessa and Derek had faced consequences for their actions, there were still loose ends to tie up, still people who had been complicit in their scheme, still parts of the truth that had not been fully exposed. It started with Vanessa's family. I had always known that her parents disapproved of me. Richard and Patricia Carter had treated me with distant politeness throughout my marriage, never quite welcoming me into their family, always maintaining a subtle barrier between themselves and their daughter's husband. I had attributed this to class snobbery, to their discomfort with a man who had come from Dorchester and worked his way up rather than inheriting his position. But as I dug deeper into Vanessa's activities, I discovered that her parents had been more than disapproving. They had been complicit. The shell companies Vanessa had used to hide stolen assets. 2 of them were registered to addresses connected to Carter family properties. The accountant who had helped structure the embezzlement scheme, he was a longtime friend of Richard Carter's, a connection that Vanessa had exploited to gain access to expertise that most amateur criminals would lack. I could not prove that Richard and Patricia knew the full extent of what their daughter was doing, but the evidence suggested, at minimum, that they had turned a blind eye to activities they should have questioned, that they had provided resources and connections that enabled Vanessa's fraud. This was the hardest part of my revenge to execute, because it required confronting people who were not directly responsible, but who had contributed to my harm. It required making judgments about complicity and accountability that were not black and white, but shades of gray. In the end, I chose to expose the truth rather than pursue direct retaliation. I drafted a detailed letter outlining everything I had discovered about the Carter family's involvement in Vanessa's scheme. I sent copies to the family's social circle, to the country club where Richard served on the board, to the charitable organizations where Patricia volunteered, to the business associates who valued the Carter name as a mark of respectability. The letter was factual, supported by documentation, and written in a tone that was more sad than angry. I was not trying to destroy the Carter family. I was simply ensuring that the people in their lives knew who they really were. The response was immediate and devastating. Richard Carter was asked to resign from the country club board. Patricia was quietly removed from her position with the local symphony's fundraising committee. Social invitations dried up. Business associates became distant. The Carter family, who had built their lives on the appearance of respectability, found themselves treated as pariahs by the same community that had once embraced them. I will admit that I felt satisfaction at this outcome. Perhaps it was petty, perhaps it was unnecessary, But after 12 years of being looked down upon, of being treated as less than by people who had raised and enabled the woman who tried to destroy me, I could not bring myself to feel guilty about their downfall. The final piece of the puzzle was Vanessa herself. Despite losing everything in the divorce, despite her reputation being destroyed, despite her parents' social exile, Vanessa did not go quietly. She launched a campaign to rehabilitate her image, spreading stories that painted me as the villain and her as the victim. She claimed that I had fabricated evidence, that I had manipulated the legal system, that I had used my wealth and connections to destroy an innocent woman. Most people did not believe her. The evidence was too clear, the documentation too thorough, but there were some, particularly people who had never met me, who were willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. I considered ignoring her. The divorce was final. I had won. What did it matter if a few strangers believed her lies? But the lies did matter, because they were part of a pattern, part of who Vanessa was at her core. She was incapable of accepting responsibility for her actions, incapable of acknowledging the harm she had caused, incapable of facing the truth about herself. And as long as she continued to spread her narrative, there was a chance that she could find new victims, new people to manipulate and exploit. I decided to end it once and for all. The opportunity came when Vanessa agreed to an interview with a local news outlet. She thought she was getting a sympathetic platform to tell her side of the story. What she did not know was that I had provided the journalist with comprehensive documentation of everything she had done, along with contacts who could verify the accuracy of the information. The interview aired in November, a year after that fateful night I had watched her through the window. It was presented as an investigative piece, examining both sides of a contentious divorce. Vanessa spoke first, telling her carefully crafted story of victimhood. She was convincing, I will give her that. She cried at the right moments, expressed outrage at the right times, painted a picture of herself as a woman destroyed by a vindictive ex-husband. Then the journalist began asking harder questions about the emails, about the hidden assets, about Derek Holloway and his criminal conviction, about the witnesses who had come forward with their own stories of Vanessa's manipulation. Vanessa's composure crumbled on camera. She became defensive, then hostile, then tried to end the interview, but it was too late. The footage was damning, showing not just the facts of her deceit, but the personality behind it, the mask slipping to reveal the person underneath. The interview went viral in certain circles, not nationally, but in Massachusetts, in the communities where Vanessa had hoped to rebuild her life. It became the definitive account of what had happened, the final word on who was the victim and who was the villain. After that, Vanessa disappeared. I heard that she moved south, maybe Florida, maybe somewhere else where nobody knew her name. I did not care enough to find out. She was out of my life, and that was all that mattered. In the aftermath of everything, I took stock of what I had lost and what I had gained. I had lost 12 years to a woman who had never loved me. I had lost money, though most of it was eventually recovered. I had lost my innocence, my belief that good intentions and honest effort were enough to protect you from people who wished you harm. But I had gained something too. I had gained clarity about who I was and what I wanted. I had gained a deeper appreciation for the people who truly cared about me, like my brother Jerome, like the friends who stood by me during the worst of it, like the employees and clients who remained loyal when others might have fled. I had gained strength that I had not known I possessed, the resilience that comes from facing your worst fears and emerging on the other side. And I had gained, perhaps most importantly, the knowledge that I was capable of fighting back. For most of my life, I had been a builder. I had focused on creating value, on constructing something from nothing, on being productive rather than destructive. I had believed that success was the best revenge, that living well would always triumph over those who wished you ill. Vanessa taught me that sometimes building is not enough. Sometimes you have to be willing to tear down the structures that are designed to destroy you. Sometimes you have to be willing to fight, not just with patience and positivity, but with strategy and strength and the ruthless determination to protect what is yours. I am not proud of everything I did in the aftermath of Vanessa's betrayal. There were moments when I was consumed by anger, when I wanted nothing more than to hurt her as badly as she had hurt me. There were decisions I made that crossed lines I had never thought I would cross. The keylogger, the surveillance, the calculated manipulation of her expectations. These were not the actions of the man I had always believed myself to be. But they were necessary in a world where people like Vanessa and Derek exist, where predators disguise themselves as partners and lovers and friends. Sometimes you have to be willing to use their own tactics against them, not to become like them, but to defend yourself from them. The man I am today is different from the man who walked into that art gallery 14 years ago. He is warier, less trusting, more attuned to the warning signs that indicate someone is not who they appear to be. He is also stronger, more confident, more secure in his ability to face whatever challenges life presents. I have dated since the divorce, carefully, cautiously, with the lessons of my marriage informing every interaction. I have met women who seem genuine, who appear to value me for who I am rather than what I can provide, but I find myself hesitating, holding back, unwilling to fully invest in anyone for fear of being deceived again. My therapist tells me this is normal, that trust takes time to rebuild, that the scars Vanessa left will heal but will never fully disappear. He tells me that I am making progress, that the fact I am willing to try at all is evidence of resilience. He tells me that not everyone is like Vanessa, that there are people in the world who are capable of genuine love and honest connection. I want to believe him. Most days I do believe him, but there is a part of me that will always be on guard, always watching for the mask to slip, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. It has been 3 years since the divorce was finalized, 3 years since I last saw Vanessa's face or heard her voice. 3 years since I dismantled the conspiracy that was designed to destroy me and watched as the conspirators faced the consequences of their choices. I think about that time often, not obsessively, not in a way that prevents me from moving forward, but reflectively. I think about the mistakes I made and the lessons I learned. I think about the person I was before and the person I have become. I think about the future and what it might hold. Last month, something happened that made me realize how far I have come. I was at a coffee shop near my office, reviewing documents before a client meeting, when a woman sat down at the table next to mine. She was reading a book, something about psychology or self-help, and after a few minutes, she looked up and caught my eye. "I like your tie," she said, smiling in a way that seemed genuine. For a moment, I felt the old fear, the suspicion, the certainty that any woman who approached me must have an ulterior motive, but I pushed through it. I thanked her. I asked about her book. We talked for 20 minutes, about nothing important, about everything that matters. Her name was Rachel. She was a teacher, elementary school, and she had a kindness in her eyes that reminded me of my mother. We exchanged numbers. We went on a date, then another, and another. I do not know where this is going. I am trying not to project, not to assume, not to expect. I am trying to be present, to take things as they come, to trust that I will know if something is wrong. But for the first time in years, I am hopeful. For the first time since that night, I watched Vanessa through the window. I can imagine a future that includes someone else. Not a replacement for what I lost, but a new beginning, a chance to love again, more wisely this time, more carefully, but with the same capacity for connection that Vanessa tried to destroy. She failed. That is the truth I hold on to when the memories get too heavy. I did not feel sorry for her. I could not afford to. Pity would have been a betrayal of myself, of the years I had spent being deceived, of the future that had been stolen from me. But I would be lying if I said I emerged from the experience unchanged. The months after the divorce were the hardest of my life, not because of the legal proceedings or the financial complications, but because of what I had learned about myself and about the nature of trust. I had built my entire life on the foundation of hard work and honest relationships, and Vanessa had shown me how easily that foundation could be undermined. I questioned everything, every memory of our marriage, every moment of apparent happiness, every word of affection she had spoken. Had any of it been real, or had I been a mark from the very beginning, selected and groomed and manipulated by a woman who saw human beings as resources to be exploited? Vanessa tried to break me, to take everything I had built, to leave me with nothing but rubble and regret. She spent 12 years positioning herself for the perfect betrayal, executing a plan that should have worked, that would have worked against almost anyone else. But I survived. I fought back. I won, not just legally, not just financially, but personally. I emerged from the worst experience of my life as a stronger person, a wiser person, a person who knows his own worth and refuses to let anyone take it from him. My wife turned into my enemy. That is how this story began. It could have ended with my destruction, with her victory, with another notch on the belt of someone who saw human beings as resources to be exploited. Instead, it ends with the truth exposed. It ends with consequences faced. It ends with justice, not the perfect justice of movies and television, but the messy, complicated justice of the real world. It ends with the knowledge that betrayers can be defeated, that predators can be stopped, that the people who try to destroy you can themselves be destroyed. If you are listening to this story because you are going through something similar, because someone you trusted has turned against you, because you feel like the ground has opened beneath your feet and there is nothing to hold on to, I want you to know something. You can survive this. It will be hard. It will take time. There will be moments when you want to give up, when the pain seems unbearable, when the mountain seems too high to climb, but you can do it. You are stronger than you know. And the people who are trying to hurt you, the people who have betrayed your trust and violated your love, they are not as powerful as they think they are. Document everything. Find people you can trust, genuinely trust, and lean on them. Hire professionals who know how to fight these battles. Do not let anger make you reckless, but do not let fear make you passive. Be strategic, be patient, be relentless. And when the time is right, when you have gathered your evidence and built your case and positioned yourself for victory, do not hesitate. Do not show mercy to people who would show you none. Do not give second chances to those who would use them to hurt you again. The people who betray us are counting on our kindness, our desire to believe the best, our reluctance to fight. They exploit these qualities because they do not possess them. They see our love as weakness, our trust as naivety, our capacity for forgiveness as vulnerability. Prove them wrong. Show them that the qualities they despise are actually sources of strength. Show them that someone who has loved deeply can also fight fiercely. Show them that trust, once broken, can be replaced by a clarity of purpose that is far more dangerous than any naive belief. This is my story. It is not over, because no story is ever really over while we are still living it. But this chapter, the chapter of my marriage and my betrayal and my revenge, is complete. I have told you everything, held nothing back, exposed the truth as fully as I know how. Vanessa, if you are somehow listening to this, I want you to know that I forgive you, not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying hatred is exhausting, and I have better things to do with my energy. But forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean I regret anything I did to stop you. It does not mean I would not do it all again if I had to. It means I am moving on. It means you no longer have power over me. It means the woman who turned into my enemy is now just a memory, a lesson learned, a chapter closed. I am 51 years old now. I have more years behind me than ahead, but the years ahead are mine, free from the weight of her deception, free from the fear of her schemes, free from the doubt that haunted me for so long. That is my revenge, not just the legal victories, not just the financial recovery, not just the public exposure of her lies. My revenge is my freedom. My revenge is my happiness. My revenge is the life I am building, one day at a time, on the foundation of truth rather than lies. My wife turned into my enemy, and I turned her defeat into my liberation. The truth was revealed. The consequences were faced. The justice was served. And now, finally, I am at peace.